You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
PackersTalk.com. You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm your host, Gil Martin. My co-host is my good friend, Sean Tehan. In addition to this show, I write for the PackersPost.com and Cheesehead TV. Sean was a TV sportscaster in Minnesota. We're all here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. Sean, we've got historical times coming up, a big changing of the guard. But before that, how about a word from our sponsor?
Yeah, we're about to take a little stroll down memory lane. We're so close to training camp, but it's time to really reflect on the man who's been in charge for a bit, leading the charge for almost 2 decades now. But before we talk about that, let's talk about who engineers and powers our show. That's Wisconsin's own Ticket King. That's theticketking.com. For more than 30 years, they've been providing Packers tickets to Packer fans, as well as Bucks tickets, Brewer tickets. Hey, those Brewers are fun right now. 3rd best record in the National League. I'm just saying, Gil. And Summerfest and other festival tickets in the Wisconsin area. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. Once again, that's theticketking.com. And if you're watching with us on YouTube today, thank you so much. You can see the link right there on your screen. You can watch every episode of No Huddle Radio on Packers Talk Network with Gil and myself on YouTube. Click on that bell while you're here. Turn the notifications on. Join the discussion. Chat with us live in the comment and the chat box. And we love to see and talk about the comments coming our way. And maybe for those who are tuning in today, you can chime in with your thoughts on essentially the man who's been in charge for, wrapping up 18 years in charge, and that's Mark Murphy. He is forced to retire because he will be age 70. He is forced to retire. Ed Policy takes over. Mark Murphy, I feel like, Gil, overall, his job was just to keep the train moving where Bob Harlan set the Packers up for success, and he just totally turned the Packer franchise. And Mark Murphy's job was essentially don't screw it up. And I think he did that and more in his time.
I think he did a lot more in his time because he built on it and he extended it. And, the one thing that is a challenge for the Packers, they play in the smallest market of any team in professional sports in North America. I don't think there is another city with a little more than 100,000 people in it that has a major league professional sports team. So the fact that you have to keep revenue coming in and keep things growing and all of the things that are challenges to a very small market team. And I think, Mark Murphy handled that beautifully and has helped the Packers to continue to grow.
If you think about it, I believe in the 4 major pro sports, we're talking NHL, NBA, and MLB, and NFL. And the Packers, their market size is around 68 to 70 usually. That's where it fluctuates. Think about it that way, where New York City is number 1, LA is number 2, Chicago's number 3, so on and so forth. I believe the next smallest market to have a team among the 4 professional sports, I believe is, and I could be mistaken here, but I believe it's New Orleans or Buffalo. And think about that, where those cities have 2 teams in the 4 major sports. Memphis is maybe around there as well too, but it's just a matter of where the Packers, it's so unique where they are by far in the smallest media market for the 4 pro sports leagues and everything like that. But they have maybe the biggest brand in the NFL, and that it's easier said than done to keep that train moving. Ed Policy, who's taken over next week as the Packers president, said the number one goal, and it kind of made people, move their heads and just kind of confused, where it's like the number one goal is to keep the Packers in Green Bay. But it's like, guess what? That's an ongoing challenge. That will always be an ongoing challenge because there's much bigger money out there and much bigger markets out there who would want the Packers. But the Packer brand is something special, and Mark Murphy kept it special and some.
Absolutely. And he has to be proud of what he's accomplished during his tenure with the organization. No question about that.
Yeah, I would say I was overall satisfied. And it was interesting because, we're talking about Ed Policy again, where he essentially has been in the building for the last 10, 12 years. Mark Murphy was an athletic director at Northwestern. He had some experience, like with running certain operations, but not at this level, not at the level of a team president of an NFL football team.
No.
And that was, Gil, you probably remember when he was hired. Was that shocking to you when the announcement was Mark Murphy will be the new president and CEO of the Green Bay Packers? I don't remember who the favorite was at the time, but I remember it was kind of a surprise to a lot of fans.
It was a surprise. And, the thing about Mark Murphy, from my perspective, I remember him best as a defensive back for the Washington Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
And in that very famous Monday night game in 1983, which the Packers won 48-47, and it was the highest scoring Monday night game up until just a few years ago, he played in that game, and he played a big role in that game for Washington. So, I remembered him best as a player for the other team.
Was that Lynn Dickey? Was that the big night that he had that Monday night game?
That was a big night for Lynn Dickey. Oh, yeah.
One of the few highlights of the 1980s for Green Bay Packers football, for sure.
Yeah, and one of the announcers on that game, O.J. Simpson. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah. It's like, hey, we all got our opinions there. So, okay. But anyways, Gil and I, we discussed last week after the show, it's like, okay, we're gonna take a trip down memory lane to talk about Mark Murphy, just the tenure, just when his time in charge of the Packers. And there's a lot of good things that happen. And we cut it down to 5 of our top memories each. And we have blended quite a bit here, Gil. I will say that. Number 5, and I'm just going to, you and I kind of matched right here for our number 5 memory. I added one other layer to it, but I put the hirings of Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur, the general manager for the Packers and the head coach for the Packers, respectively. Goot was promoted to general manager before the 2018 season after Ted Thompson had stepped down. Remember, Ted Thompson was hired by Bob Harlan in the previous tenure, in the previous president tenure. And Brian Gutekunst is a guy who was with the Packers organization for so long. He was getting interviews with other teams, and rightfully so, because his teams have been pretty darn good since he's taken over as the general manager. 73-42-1, 3 NFC North titles, 5 winning seasons in 7 years, 5 playoff appearances. And then Matt LaFleur, you remember how nervous he looked in his introductory press conference, and Mark Murphy kind of took over the microphone, and he took over the interview process, the Q&A process, when Matt LaFleur had his introductory press conference. But Matt LaFleur hasn't looked shy at all on the field as a coach. 67-33, 3 NFC North championships, 5 winning seasons in 6 years. The playoff record, not great, but his win percentage, he's 9th in NFL history amongst coaches who have coached at least 100 games. And Mark Murphy and Brian Gutekunst were a big reason why Matt LaFleur is in charge of the Green Bay Packers now, and he's one of the better coaches today. So I feel like this is something that's definitely a good look on the record of Mark Murphy.
No doubt. And, think about this. You talked about when Murphy was hired, was it a surprise? I don't think anybody had Matt LaFleur on their bingo card.
No, I didn't.
He was not a big name at the time. He was very young. He only had 1 year of experience calling plays as an offensive coordinator, and the team was not that great. They dealt with a lot of injuries that year. But again, these were very smart hires that have worked out pretty darn well. And getting back to your original theme, it kept the engine running, because the Packers, realistically, since 1992, have been one of the better teams in the National Football League. And hiring Gutekunst and LaFleur have kept them that way. So kudos to Mark Murphy for that.
I think they've had, 5 losing seasons maybe since 1992. It's not a lot. We've been spoiled with winning big time. And I know it's like we've only won 2 Super Bowl titles. But guess what? Tell that to the Vikings and the Lions fans nearby. And you know what? I think they take 1. So 2 is better. It's hard just to win 1. So getting 2 is even better. But I will say, though, also with these hirings, Gil, where it's really cool that Matt LaFleur has turned into what he has been. I think I remember at the time when they were looking for a head coach, I wanted them, first of all, to poach either Kyle Shanahan or go poach Sean McVay. But the Packers, they just don't do that. They don't operate that way, and those teams weren't going to give up those coaches. It wasn't going to happen. But then I remember I wanted Lincoln Riley when he was at Oklahoma at the time.
There you go.
And he's been kind of an okay coach at USC. He's got all the resources, doesn't seem to be making it happen. I think Matt LaFleur still to this day was the right hire. Do you remember who you wanted instead of Matt LaFleur?
I do not. No. I just remember being surprised that Matt LaFleur was the pick. And so far, I think I'm pleased that Matt LaFleur was the pick. But Oh, I got to do a little better in the playoffs. That's the thing that's sort of hanging over his legacy right now.
For sure. And I will say another layer to the Brian Gutekunst hire. A lot of fans wanted Elliot Wolf because of the name Wolf, the son of Ron Wolf, as GM. And the Packers could have easily been like, nepotism could have played a huge part, even though Elliot Wolf is now running the operation for the New England Patriots. And TBD if that's going to turn around or not. It's not looking good right now, but the Patriots look better on paper already, and Elliot Wolf's a big part of that. But kudos to Mark Murphy going with what he thought was the better hire, not for what maybe would have been a hire that would have been made a lot much better headline and a much stronger headline, gotten a lot more attention, because he could have hired Elliot Wolf, been like, oh, hey, the second coming of Ron Wolf, he's our guy now. So
right.
But he went Brian Gutekunst, and it has been a bad decision yet.
No, it's always, sometimes it's easier to make a certain decision, but it's not always better. And credit has to be given that he did not just do the easy thing.
And it is interesting, too, where Murphy also changed a little bit of the power structure, where Gutekunst and LaFleur, the coach and the GM, report to the president. And Ed Policy sounds like he's going to keep that going when he takes charge. And you would have thought, oh, maybe there's a little more meddling there and everything like that. But I don't think it has been, because it doesn't seem like it has been a negative effect on the field for the Packers at all.
It's worked well so far. Now, Policy did say he will amend it if necessary, but of course, if there's a problem, you got to fix it. So absolutely.
Kudos to Mark Murphy too, not running this team like he's an actual owner, like a Jerry Jones or someone like that, because it'd be a lot different if he did. If he was very, it's like he trusts the people he put in charge, and that's it. Now, Gil, let's go to number 4 on your list. What do you got for us on the fourth biggest memory of the Mark Murphy tenure?
8 straight playoff seasons. I just think that is a heck of an accomplishment. Look, there are very few dynasties anymore. You've got so many teams and so many playoff games that you need to win. For the Packers to go to the playoffs for 8 straight years is a really great accomplishment. And it happened under Mark Murphy's regime and his leadership. So I give him some credit for that. And I think it's a great accomplishment.
Obviously helped having maybe one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time under center Aaron Rodgers, a guy whose number 12 is going to be retired one day in the facade of Lambeau Field. It's going to be beautiful. He earned that. And but they just had a machine, man. They just had so many good teams. And Ted Thompson played a big part. The late Ted Thompson, may he rest in peace. He played a big part in that, drafting really good players overall, good receivers late in the draft, good linemen, good, just making the right, signing Charles Woodson, adding Ryan Pickett, a big part of that Super Bowl team, trading up, having the guts to trade up for Clay Matthews. And essentially it's just, I think it's not really that wasn't Mark Murphy making those picks, but that Mark Murphy definitely trusted Ted Thompson to get stuff done and put essentially the fate of the team in his hands. And that says a lot about Mark Murphy, where again, it's like, Jordan Love was drafted by the Green Bay Packers and Brian Gutekunst made that call. If that was an owner calling that, they would have been like, no, we're not drafting a quarterback. We have Aaron Rodgers. We're going to go draft a receiver. And it's just totally different. It's just totally different the way they operate compared to every single team, maybe in pro sports in general. It's just nobody else has this model. No one else can replicate this model. And it's a wonderful thing. And that just the success that they had from 2009 through 2017, going to the playoffs 8 straight years, Gil, it says everything about the way the organization has been run for so long.
Yeah, and the tone was set. I mean, he didn't make the individual decisions, but he created an atmosphere and a chain of command that allowed everybody to do their jobs to the best of their abilities.
Do you feel like essentially that it was an underperformance, that they got one Super Bowl, but do you feel like it was underperformance? I think there's obviously a lot of bad luck in the playoffs, but the NFL, man, it's just like everyone compares to Tom Brady and Mahomes, but it's like those two are just different. It's like those two guys are different. And Brady had the perfect coach match in Belichick. Mahomes has that with Andy Reid too. And everyone's like, why didn't Aaron Rodgers have that? It's like, I think the NFC was a lot better than the AFC at the time too. And it just happens. That's football, man. I don't know. I just feel like it's just tough luck.
Think about this too, though. in 2010, when the Packers did win the Super Bowl, I don't think they were the best team in football that year. They were very good. They were as good maybe as anybody. They were probably the best team a year later, at least until Nick Collins got hurt. But, maybe they won a year earlier than they should have. And then, 2011, 2014, some seasons maybe they could have won. But, that's the modern game where there's so many playoff teams and so many playoff games you got to win. So it's not quite so clear cut anymore. How about your number 4?
My number 4, and it'll tie in with you pretty quickly, Gil. It's the creation of the Titletown District, and that's number 4 on my list. The mixed-use development outside of Lambeau Field. It opened in 2017, about 10 years into Mark Murphy's tenure. It was announced in 2015 that this is going to be a big overhaul in that area. I think it used to be a Sears or a Kohl's, or there was a grocery store and parking lots out there. And it was a significant investment, Gil. It was $100 million+ investment. And there's a luxury hotel there, a sports medicine clinic, a skating rink, a sledding hill, a football field, restaurant, and brewery. And it's all Wisconsin organizations and businesses. And it was a huge hit during the NFL draft just to have that plaza area, just to hang out and just have fun. And it's just a great environment for all ages. And the creation of that Titletown District was really something. And it's just a great tourist. It's kind of a tourist trap in a way, where it's like, people who've never been to Lambeau Field, it's a bit of a trap to like hang out there for a while and spend your money there. But it definitely amplified and helped the business of the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah. And part of that was, what do you do for the other 350 days a year when there is no Packers football? You've got this stadium, you've got the area around it. How do you make it profitable? And getting back to what you said earlier, you're looking at a situation where you got to keep up. You want to keep the team in Green Bay. You got to keep growing more revenue streams and figuring out how to keep up with the rest of the league in that regard. Titletown District had a major impact in that area, and that is also why it's my number 3. So yeah. You and I were thinking around the same scenario essentially. This is a massive success by Mark Murphy, and it's just really cool. Gil, have you been there? Have you seen Titletown District? I know you're out in New York, so I the last time I was in Green Bay was 2017, but I did not have a chance to spend a lot of time in the district. So I've seen it, but I haven't really dived in deeply.
Yeah, and it's just I think too, it's like I got to think that they may expand upon that one day too, because it has been such a huge success. And it's really cool when games on prime time in Green Bay or just on national TV in general, and they do that area of Lambeau, and you can see Titletown District, and it's a really a cool thing to see from above and get an aerial view of and to walk through. It's humongous. It is absolutely humongous. It's really outstanding. It was great to have for the NFL draft this year for sure. And we're going to talk about the draft in just a bit, obviously, but the creation of the Titletown District, obviously, that's got Mark Murphy's fingerprints all over it, and it's only going to grow from there. Now, number 3 on my list, it was knowing when to move on from Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, because, I mean, you're talking about moving on from future Hall of Fame quarterbacks at the time with Brett Favre and now with Aaron Rodgers. And Brett Favre obviously had a 2007 season that if Tom Brady doesn't throw 50 touchdown passes and lead the New England Patriots to an undefeated regular season record, Brett Favre wins an MVP in 2007. And then essentially the organization, they told him, hey, we need a decision before free agency, before the draft. Just let us know. Favre said, I'm done. Packers are like, we're moving on with Aaron Rodgers. Favre comes back a few months later, said, no, wait, I want to come back. And the Packers like, well, not so fast. Like, you're going to have to compete for the job. Aaron Rodgers deals with some horrible treatment from the fans at the time. And he was booed on family night. He's booed at training camp. And he just persevered. And he rose, and he was probably a better quarterback. He was better than Brett Favre was. And he was unbelievably good and great. And just arguably the greatest player in franchise history. And for Mark Murphy to stick with Aaron Rodgers and the organization to stick with Aaron Rodgers from the top down when that whole saga was unfolding in the summer of 2008, which was so ugly here. And it was It just divided a lot of fans, and it made people really, really angry. It's the ugly side of being a sports fan when this was going on. And Mark Murphy and the organization stuck with Aaron Rodgers, and it paid off in such a big way. And then moving on from Aaron Rodgers clearly was the right time. Jordan Love was ready. It was time to move on from Aaron Rodgers. But I think more so knowing when to move on from Brett Favre and sticking with Aaron Rodgers, that says a lot about Mark Murphy.
It does. And you don't want to be overly sentimental about these things. Was there ever in the last 50 years a more beloved Packer than Brett Favre, especially when you think about what the team was like for 2 decades before he got there? And, he was everybody's, sort of naughty cousin. He was fun. He loved what he was doing. He turned the team, or helped turn the team, from a perennial loser into a consistent winner. He did outrageous things on and off the field. But he exuded love of the game, and fans just identified with that. But still, knowing when it was time to move on. And, with both Favre and Rodgers, the two of them kind of sowed the seeds of their own departure.
They did. And
eventually the fact that Murphy and the front office basically realized, when you start acting up this way, like, maybe it's time to cut the cord. We have the heir apparent in the building. It takes guts. It's not something that everybody would do. There would be a lot of people in a leadership position who would say, we can't trade Brett Favre. He's Brett Favre. Well, you can. You did. It was the right move. And it was the right move to trade Rodgers as well when they did that. So I think it did take a lot of courage to do that. And credit definitely has to be given to Murphy, to Thompson, to Gutekunst for being able to pull the trigger when the time was right.
And again, that's just the benefit of not having an owner, having a defense. Because guess what? An owner would have stepped in that situation and been like, no, we're sticking with Brett Favre. Like, Aaron Rodgers is not going to start. We're going to move Aaron Rodgers for anything. Remember, there was a trade reportedly on the table in Mark Murphy's first year in charge. It was that first year where the Raiders were ready to trade Randy Moss to the Green Bay Packers. And the thing is, though, the Raiders wanted Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers said no. Ted Thompson said no. I don't know if Mark Murphy was involved, but that took a lot of courage. And guess what? If that trade comes across if an owner gets notified of that, they're like, well, we're making that deal. Like, we're absolutely screw the future. We want to win now. And it would have screwed up the future like crazy if the Packers would have made that deal. Obviously, Randy Moss had a historic season in first year in New England, and they were on the cusp of winning the Super Bowl until the Giants just essentially stole that game at the very end. One of the few times in my life I actually rooted for a New York team to win a Super Bowl, even though they beat the Packers the week before to get there. But just having that conviction and just sticking with and essentially having faith in the plan is all you got to know about the Green Bay Packers. And again, that's a mark of the top. That really says everything about the top down, where it's like, hey, like, we got to be convicted in our decisions. Like, we're not going to make rash decisions. We're going to think stuff over, and we're going to do what's best for the Green Bay Packers to make us the best football team for now and for the future years ahead.
Yep. And mission accomplished.
Absolutely. And now number 2, Gil, on our list, it was obviously the big event this past spring. We both agreed here, and that was the NFL draft coming to Green Bay, which is unbelievable that they held an NFL draft in the smallest town, the smallest city in the 4 major professional sports. Mark Murphy tried for a long time to get the NFL draft to come to Green Bay, finally arrived in 2025, his final year in charge. And man, what a massive success it was. It was estimated that the original attendance estimate, I think, was around like 370,000 people for the 3-day event. Well, it was estimated that 600,000 fans attended the 3-day event, second most attended draft in its history. The economic impact was estimated to be 20 million locally and 94 million statewide. Well, they essentially quadrupled that number locally. It was 80 million locally that the economic impact was, and $105 million statewide. And Gil, I was there. I was so impressed by what Green Bay was able to do with the draft. They really knocked it out of the park. It was outside of some poor transportation from the casino to Lambeau Field, not really in the Packers, but outside of that, it was really a remarkable experience. And the Packers really did a remarkable job organizing this because it was a wild success. And I think a lot of casual fans who were going for the first time or going to a draft would be like, yeah, that was pretty darn good.
Think about this. You said what, 680,000, did you say? People?
600,000 it was estimated that attended, I believe.
So that's like 5 times the population of the city.
Yeah.
I mean, logistically, to pull that off, and let's say this, without Mark Murphy and without his creating the Titletown district, no way in a million years would Green Bay be hosting a draft. No. So it was an amazing. It was the cherry on the sundae of Mark Murphy's tenure as Packers president.
I'll tell you this, man. My buddies and I, that first day of the draft, we were watching people run 40-yard dashes. A lot of people who would trip and eat dirt quite a bit. And we did that for about like 30 to 45 minutes. Way too much time. It's just a bunch of 30-year-olds watching this. But it was one of the men. It was just like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like the draft is going to happen in a few hours, but let's watch some people eat the ground during the 40-yard dash, trying it on their own. But that was like one of many things. There was so much. It was very interactive. There was so much stuff to do for adults, for kids, and also just like seeing the Packers draft a wide receiver in round 1 for the first time in 23 years. Something that the fans have been begging for a long time, and him being there in person. And then Barron Sorrell being drafted in the 4th round and being there in person in front of his the fans of his new team. That was an epic thing too, to be able to witness that and see that. It was just very cool all around. And honestly, you couldn't have scripted a better draft, and the way that you couldn't have scripted any better if you were the Green Bay Packers.
No doubt. It was an overwhelming success and some great moments there. And look, now it'll be many years until Green Bay gets considered again because they're rotating it. But I wouldn't be surprised if 15, 20 years down the road, Green Bay gets another opportunity to host the draft.
The big thing with Green Bay is they got the history. They got so much history there, and that's what's going to drive the possibility of the draft coming back one day. And I hope it's sooner rather than later, but time will tell. Number 1 on our list, Gil, it's pretty easy. During the Mark Murphy tenure, Super Bowl 45 champions. They beat the Steelers in Super Bowl 45, 31-25. We talked about how maybe they weren't the best team that year, but they got hot at the right time. They won their final 2 regular season games against the Giants and Bears to clinch the final spot in the NFC playoffs. Also helped a lot, Deshaun Jackson from the Eagles beating the Giants the week before they played the Giants. The Packers played the Giants. Thank you so much, Deshaun Jackson, to this day. But then the Packers beat the Eagles on the road. The Falcons, they destroyed on the road, the number 1 seed in the NFC. And then the Chicago Bears, they beat them on the road and route to the Super Bowl. They won the Hal's Trophy in Chicago. They won the Lombardi Trophy in Dallas. It was just beautiful overall. The Packers also had, 16 players on IR that year, a lot of key guys. They lost Donald Driver and Charles Woodson to injury in that Super Bowl. Nick Collins was also hobbled during the game. To this day, the Packers are still the lowest seed that year. They were the 6th seed, lowest seed from the NFC to win a Super Bowl in NFC history. Pittsburgh won as a 6th seed in 2005. It was a thing of beauty that year. And I remember being a sophomore in college and watching that unfold. And you just felt like, it's like, okay, this team gets in, they're going to go all the way. I was at that final regular season game against Chicago. My buddy and I went, we scalped tickets. It was really expensive at the time. Really, it was a cheap ticket now looking back on it, if you look compared to today's standards. Right. But you knew that was going to be the last home game if they made it to the playoffs. And we were screaming, Super Bowl, here we come. And it happened. You knew it was destiny. And it was so cool to see that happen.
You know, when they beat Atlanta, that's when I knew this team really could win. And that may have been the best game of Aaron Rodgers' career.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe statistically he had 1 or 2 games that equal it, but everything he did just turned to gold. And let's not forget a certain interception return for a touchdown before the half by Tyrone Williams that also really put that game away.
Tyrone Williams. Tyrone Williams is the 90s.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Super Bowl champion as well. Super Bowl champion DB
Absolutely.
as well,
It was that game told me that this team was capable of beating anyone, anytime, anywhere.
I remember James Jones had some critical drops during the playoffs and during that season too, but he made a ridiculous touchdown grab late in the first half against the Falcons in that game that was just like, he always made the toughest grab, but he always dropped the easiest passes. And that's just the way James Jones was. But when Tramon Williams returned that pick six, I screamed so much. I was in my parents' basement. I was with some friends, and we were just going crazy. And I think I remember watching the highlights over and over on TV after they won that game, just because like they destroyed them. That was the most fun I've ever had. I think to this day, Gil, I think that's the most fun I've ever had watching a Packer game.
And Atlanta was the number one seed, which you know, it was an unbelievable performance. And I mean, I had that game on my DVR. I must have watched it, 50 times before the next season started, because it was that dominant and that good.
Yeah, it was awesome. And what's crazy about that season too, why I felt like the Packers definitely, if they got in, they were going to win it, is because they never trailed in a game by more than 7 points at any point during that entire season. Yeah. They were always in it. They were just falling short here and there. And whether it was an injury or just bad luck, last second field goals or late turnovers, but they figured it out at the right time. And then they went all the way. And it wasn't, they were the 6th seed going to the Super Bowl, and Pittsburgh was the 2 seed coming out of the AFC. And I believe Green Bay was the favorites going into that game. Yeah. And it's because everyone knew, it's like, this team is talented enough. They just had some bad luck during the regular season, but Mark Murphy being able to hoist that trophy, man, that's got to be number one on his list too during his time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, with 32 teams in the league, it is not easy to win a Super Bowl anymore. Not that it was ever easy, but it's even harder than it ever was. And what a great moment that was.
And Mark Murphy's time, we counted real quick before going on YouTube today, 186 wins. The Packers won 186 games, lost 104 games, and had 2 ties, 637 win percentage overall during Mark Murphy's tenure. His job was to not screw it up. He definitely didn't. And it was very much a successful tenure. And I will say, and from the Mark Murphy tenure, Gil, is anytime you put a microphone in front of that guy, you could expect some good stuff, some good sound bites. He didn't care. He told it how it was. It sometimes got him in trouble, made the Packers look bad. But he was the boss. He's like, yeah, it's like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm just going to be honest about it. And I did appreciate that honesty from Mark Murphy too.
Yeah, it's refreshing in this modern era of coach speak and front office speak that he just said what had to be said, and if it got him into trouble, it got him into trouble. He's
like, who's going to fire me? I'm not going to. It's like, what, the board?
There's no owner.
That's it. Yeah, it's like the board and I are fine. So it was great. It was a great era overall. Gil, obviously, you probably got some stuff cooking online about Mark Murphy's time in charge of the Packers coming to an end. What else you got coming up at Packers Post and on Cheesehead TV?
Well, on Packers Post, I'm going position by position right now, asking 3 big questions for each position group as we get ready and lead up to training camp. And over on Cheesehead TV, I kind of focused in on the battle for the 3rd starting linebacker spot, which is wide open. 3 major candidates fighting for that position.
It's going to be a good training camp. A lot of position battles, and hey, that's exactly what you want if you're an NFL GM. You want as much competition as possible, and you want to see who rises to the top when the competition when it gets hard. So, Gil, before we wrap up, are you ready for some trivia?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, we mentioned earlier in this episode the accolades of Packers head coach Matt LaFleur. LaFleur is only in his mid-40s, and he's top 10 in NFL history in win percentage amongst NFL head coaches who have at least 100 games coached in charge under their belts. Gil, which former NFL head coach holds the all-time record for winning percentage with a minimum of 100 games?
Wow.
I will say there's not really a Packer tie here, but he was a very popular coach.
Okay.
And people to this day, youngsters too, probably know who this guy is.
Okay, so it's not obscure by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
I will go Don Shula.
That's a great guess, Gil, but no, it is John Madden.
John Madden.
Obviously the Madden video games and everything like that. John Madden went 103, 32, and 7 in his time with the Oakland Raiders in his 10-year coaching career from 1969 through 1978, a 759 win percentage. He never coached a team with a losing record. Obviously was a great broadcaster. He loved Brett Favre. If anyone knows that, he loved Brett Favre. But he kind of, it's funny, if you listen to him, I remember with John Madden, he kind of came off as a bumbling idiot, but you really listen to him, it's like this guy knew his stuff. He knew.
Oh, boy, did he know his stuff. And, you know, the ironic thing, highest winning percentage with 100 games, 1 Super Bowl win. Yeah. And they had so many trips to the AFC Championship game. His teams were fun, and he had fun. And he had fun as a broadcaster. And one of my favorite John Madden quotes, and I'll tie it back to the Packers, he talked about when he was a young assistant coach attending a coaching convention, and Vince Lombardi was lecturing on the power sweep. Mm-hmm. And he lectured for 8 hours on one play.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's when he realized, he said, that he had so much more to learn as a coach. And I just love that story and that quote. And
John Madden was great. He was just, I loved him as a broadcaster. I feel like he was definitely the standard for color commentators to this day. There's just no one else like him. And it's just because he was so authentic and everything like that. But obviously he was a great coach too. And in case you're curious, amongst all NFL head coaches, not including minimum 100 games coach, Guy Chamberlain is the all-time winningest coach in NFL history. He coached the then Canton Bulldogs, Cleveland Bulldogs, Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, and Chicago Cardinals from 1922 through 1927. Coached 81 total games. Vince Lombardi, who the Super Bowl trophy is named after, he's 3rd overall, second amongst coaches with at least 100 games coached in NFL history with a .738 win percentage. He finished his coaching career with a record of 96, 34, and 6. And yeah, Gil, so obviously Vince Lombardi and John Madden, two of the top coaches win percentage-wise. All they did was win. And Vince Lombardi has a few more championships under his belt than John Madden did, but both obviously so monumental for the game of football in general and for the coaching profession.
Yeah, both on and off the field, I would say. Lombardi culturally and Madden with his video game and with his second career as a broadcaster, their influence reverberated beyond just wins and losses.
Yeah, it's cool. Hopefully Matt LaFleur can get a Super Bowl win. That's just get over that hump, Gil. That's all.
And if he does, he's got to have a street named after him too in Green Bay.
Yeah,
that's a rule.
I went up north this past weekend for a little trip. I stayed in Green Bay. I was near the Donald Driver statue, and it was just like, hey, you know, Matt LaFleur Way or whatever, or Matt LaFleur Parkway or something like that could look really nice in downtown Green Bay coming up.
Absolutely. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be right back here next week. You can follow us on Twitter at Gil Packers and at GB Packer Sean to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. Or you can email us at gbpackersean@gmail.com. Make sure you subscribe to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. And big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show. And thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.